What if almost everything you've been taught about studying is wrong? Think back to the last time you tried to learn something difficult. Maybe it was preparing for an exam, mastering a new software program, learning a language, or picking up a musical instrument. You probably reread your notes, highlighted key passages, maybe you crammed the night before. And at some point, you felt that reassuring sensation of familiarity. I know this, you thought, but then the test came, or the real-world application, and suddenly that familiarity evaporated. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The strategies that feel most productive while learning are often the least effective for long-term retention. That's the provocative claim at the heart of Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning, by Peter C. Brown, co-authored with cognitive scientists Henry L. Roediger III and Mark A. McDaniel. This is not another productivity guide. It is a deep exploration into how memory actually works, and how to align your learning with the brain's natural processes, rather than against them. Over the next hour, we're going to unpack the science, the case studies, the surprising experiments, and the practical techniques that challenge decades of conventional wisdom about education. More importantly, we'll explore what it really means to learn something so well that it sticks not just for an exam, but for life. Let's begin with the foundation. The authors came together from different backgrounds. Peter Brown is a storyteller and writer. Roediger and McDaniel are researchers who have spent decades studying memory and cognition. Their goal was simple but ambitious: translate robust scientific findings into language ordinary learners can use. The problem they address is enormous. Most students, professionals, and even educators rely on study habits that create an illusion of mastery. Rereading, highlighting, massed practice, these techniques feel smooth and efficient. But learning that feels easy is often shallow. The core thesis of the book is this: durable learning requires effort. Specifically, it requires forms of difficulty that challenge memory in productive ways. The authors introduce the concept of desirable difficulties. These are learning strategies that slow you down and feel harder in the moment, but strengthen retention and transfer over time. That's the paradox. Struggle is not the enemy of learning. It is the engine of it. The book opens by challenging one of the most entrenched habits in education: rereading. When students reread material, they increase familiarity. The text feels recognizable, but recognition is not recall. Being able to identify information when you see it is fundamentally different from being able to retrieve it from memory without cues. Retrieval practice actively recalling information is far more powerful. The authors describe experiments where students read passages and then either reread them or took a practice test. Immediately afterward, rereading seemed to perform just as well. But a week later, those who practiced retrieval remembered significantly more. Why? Because memory is strengthened by use. Each act of retrieval is like exercising a muscle. It reinforces neural pathways, making future access easier. This insight has profound implications. Instead of passively reviewing notes, you should close the book and ask yourself, what do I remember? What were the key ideas? Can I explain them? Even attempting retrieval and failing is beneficial. The struggle signals the brain that this information matters. This leads to the second major principle: spacing. Cramming feels efficient. You focus intensely in one session, but massed practice leads to rapid forgetting. Spaced practice, distributing study over time, creates intervals of forgetting that force retrieval to work harder. That effort strengthens memory. The authors illustrate this with real-world examples, including language learning and medical training. Students who revisit material periodically outperform those who study in concentrated bursts. Spacing leverages a biological reality. Memory consolidates over time. Sleep, reflection, and intervals allow neural encoding to deepen. Then comes interleaving. Traditional learning often uses blocked practice, repeating the same type of problem over and over. This builds short-term fluency. but interleaving mixing different types of problems or topics forces discrimination. For example, instead of solving 20 identical algebra problems, you mix algebra, geometry, and word problems. It feels confusing. Performance during practice drops, but long-term understanding improves. Why? Because interleaving trains the brain to identify the type of problem before applying a solution. It strengthens pattern recognition. The authors cite studies in baseball training, where batters who faced varied pitches improved more than those who practiced predictable sequences. Variability enhances adaptability. Now we move into a deeper cognitive insight: illusions of knowing. Humans are poor judges of their own learning. When material feels fluent, easy to process, we assume we understand it. Highlighting and rereading increase fluency without increasing mastery. One powerful example involves students who predict high performance after repeated study sessions, yet their actual scores often contradict their confidence. The book urges learners to rely on objective measures, practice tests, feedback, delayed recall instead of subjective feelings. This ties into metacognition, the ability to monitor and regulate your own thinking. Strong learners regularly ask, "Do I really know this? Can I teach it? Can I apply it in a new context?" Now let's explore elaboration. Elaboration means connecting new information to what you already know. Instead of memorizing isolated facts, you ask why and how. You generate examples. You explain concepts in your own words. This deep processing creates multiple retrieval pathways. For example, if you're learning about supply and demand, you don't just memorize definitions. You connect it to gasoline prices, housing markets, or your own experiences. The richer the web of connections, the stronger the memory. The book also emphasizes generation. When you attempt to solve a problem before being shown the solution, even if you fail, you prime the brain. The subsequent explanation sticks better. This is counterintuitive. Many students prefer to be shown the correct method immediately, but generation increases engagement and encoding. Another powerful concept discussed is the role of feedback. Practice without feedback can reinforce errors. Effective feedback is timely, specific, and corrective. It helps calibrate your understanding. The authors also discuss the importance of mental models. Experts differ from novices not because they have more isolated facts, but because they organize knowledge into meaningful frameworks. They see underlying principles rather than surface details. For example, experienced physicians categorize diseases by underlying mechanisms, not just symptoms. This allows flexible application. Learning, therefore, is not about accumulation. It is about organization. Now let's explore the case studies that bring these ideas to life. One story involves military training. The authors describe how flight instructors implemented retrieval practice and spacing in pilot education. Instead of cramming checklists, trainees were tested repeatedly over time. Retention and performance improved significantly. Another example comes from medical education, where residents who engaged in repeated self-testing performed better in high-pressure diagnostic situations. Even elementary school math programs showed improvement when interleaving was introduced. The consistency across domain sports, medicine, language, academics suggests these principles are rooted in fundamental cognitive architecture. Now let's connect these ideas to real-world applications. If you're a student, replace passive review with active recall. Create flashcards. Take practice quizzes. Explain concepts aloud without notes. If you're a professional learning new software, simulate tasks without guidance, then check your work. If you're learning a language, test yourself frequently and revisit vocabulary over weeks rather than days. If you're teaching others, design assessments that require retrieval and transfer rather than recognition. But the implications go deeper than technique. The philosophy underlying Make It Stick challenges our relationship with difficulty. Modern culture often equates ease with intelligence. If something feels hard, we assume we're not good at it. but the book reframes difficulty as evidence of growth. This aligns with growth mindset research. Struggle is not a sign of inadequacy. It is a necessary condition for durable learning. The authors also critique the myth of learning styles. While individuals have preferences, there is little evidence that tailoring instruction to a specific style dramatically improves outcomes. Effective learning strategies are universal. They also challenge the belief that talent alone determines success. Deliberate practice, structured around retrieval and feedback, builds expertise. From a psychological perspective, the book highlights the brain's adaptability. Neuroplasticity allows learning throughout life, but plasticity requires engagement and effort. Now let's explore the deeper implications. Make It Stick is not just about exams, it is about competence. In a world where information is abundant, the ability to retain and apply knowledge is a competitive advantage. The book suggests that true mastery requires embracing uncertainty. Testing yourself means risking failure. Spacing means tolerating temporary forgetting. Interleaving means enduring confusion. These emotional experiences, frustration, doubt, discomfort are not obstacles. They are signals that learning is happening. There are, however, limitations to consider. Desirable difficulties must be calibrated. If material is too challenging without guidance, learners can become overwhelmed. Spacing and interleaving require planning. They are less convenient than cramming. Retrieval practice can feel discouraging when you forget. Without understanding the science, learners may misinterpret forgetting as failure. Context matters. Novices need foundational knowledge before complex interleaving becomes effective. The key is balance, introducing challenge gradually while maintaining support. As we move toward our conclusion, let's return to the central message. Learning that sticks is not accidental. It is engineered. It requires moving beyond what feels comfortable and embracing strategies grounded in cognitive science. It requires humility, recognizing that your intuition about studying may be flawed. It requires disciplined spacing practice, even when deadlines loom. And it requires courage to test yourself honestly. Imagine what would happen if schools widely adopted these principles. If students grew up understanding that difficulty is desirable. If workplaces encouraged retrieval and reflection instead of passive meetings. Imagine approaching every new skill with confidence, not because it feels easy, but because you understand how to make it stick. The most powerful idea in this book is simple yet transformative. Memory is strengthened by retrieval, reinforced by spacing, deepened by elaboration, and sharpened by variation. When you align your learning with these truths, you shift from short-term performance to long-term mastery. So the next time you sit down to learn something, resist the urge to highlight endlessly. Close the book. Test yourself. Spread your practice over days. Mix topics. Embrace struggle. Because learning is not about feeling smart in the moment. It's about becoming capable over time. And capability, the kind that endures, is built one retrieval at a time.